Okay, good morning. As the chief said, we're here to announce the charges on Mr. Harold Herr. Before I begin, I just want to say a couple things. Obviously, this individual is presumed innocent at this point in time and will remain until he's convicted. The other caution that I want to say now before I forget, in case I forget, is you're going to hear, obviously, this unfortunately was worse than just simply a kidnapping, and there are terrible facts and circumstances involving the 5-year-old, which you'll now hear about. And the family of the victim is requesting privacy and asking that the press respect that, and I'm sure you understand that and appreciate your cooperation in that. Mr. Herr has been arrested in the abduction of our 5-year-old victim and charged with a number of felony counts. I'll go through them one at a time. There's 2 counts of kidnapping charged against them, both felonies of the first degree, 1 count of unlawful restraint, a felony of the second degree, 1 count of interference with the custody of children, a felony of the second degree. He's charged with involuntary deviant sexual intercourse of a child, a felony in the first degree, which carries a 10-year mandatory sentence. Sexual assault, a felony in the second degree, 2 counts of aggravated indecent assault, 1 of which carries a 5-year mandatory and 1 of which carries a 10-year mandatory. 1 count of misdemeanor 1 indecent assault, 1 count of unlawful contact with a minor, and finally corruption of minors, a felony in the third degree. So he's looking at 2 10-year mandatories as well as a 5-year. I didn't add him up, but obviously he's looking at over 100 years of potential when he's convicted of these crimes. As I said, he remains presumed innocent. This case, the facts are well known to the media and the public concerning the abduction part of it and the circumstances thereof. That started on July 11th in the afternoon when she was playing at her grandmother's and went around the side of the building to look for a bicycle, get her bicycle. Mr. Herr was there waiting for her. She said hi to him, he said hi to her, and immediately his crime started. He told her, "You're pretty, and I think I'm going to keep you," at which point in time he grabbed her by the neck and forced her into her car, into his car. He then took her away and told her that she had to be naked right now or he would kill her. He told her if she did not listen, he would kill her. He then had her, she removed her clothes. She was facing death, this 5-year-old. And then he sexually, he took her someplace in an unknown location at this point in time and sexually molested her in numerous ways with his mouth and penetration with his finger, causing her obviously pain. He then took her at some point in time, mentioned that he would take her for ice cream. He actually did go to Pinewood, right? Pineview, sorry. Dairy there, and she was naked, so did not go in. He would have approached by himself and got some of the ice cream. For whatever reason, this is what he did. And after about a couple hours, did drive back in the direction of where she was from, and that's when the community had kicked in along with the police and the teenagers that you're aware of already. I'm not going to refer to them by name, even though I know they've disclosed their names to the media. That's their choice. They're juveniles, and it's our policy not to do that. That doesn't diminish, particularly their contributions to assisting in the arrest and saving our young 5-year-old victim. These are the kind of crimes that do enrage the community, defend their sensibilities, and get the kind of outpouring of community assistance to police officers that we had and we're fortunate to have in this case. He dropped her off. He saw the police, probably took a different route to avoid getting caught, and fortunately for all of us, these teenagers followed him and were able to get a description of the car, which I'll let the chief talk about more when he makes his comments about putting this case together, but that provided tremendous assistance in locating this individual and determining who, in fact, was responsible for these horrific crimes. I certainly want to thank the community. I certainly want to thank the police department, Manheim Township, for the outstanding work they've done. They've really worked constantly on this. And Chief Harkins for his leadership, and Karen Mansfield, who worked hand in hand with the police on this case, as she does on many of our worst sexual offenses. This is a nightmare case for parents and for everyone in the community. Just to think about the horrific nature of having a loved one, a 5-year-old daughter, abducted even for a short period of time, sends chills up and down all of our spines. It's haunting, it's terrible, and there really is no punishment that we can provide that's going to be adequate to make up for what was done just for the abduction, not even getting to the fact that he sexually molested a 5-year-old. In our lives, you like to be able to tell your children that that monsters are not real, but they are. And for an individual in a case like this to approach a stranger, child of another, forcibly abduct her, threaten to kill a 5-year-old, that in and of itself is hard to fathom. That someone would threaten to kill a 5-year-old girl. And then not only that, to not stop there, but then to proceed to sexually molest her in multiple ways. That is a monster. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that he faces justice and will never be released. As I said, I'm not sure that's enough, but we work within the constraints of the law, and that's what we'll do. Again, I want to thank everybody here, from the police department, from my office, and particularly from the community, because without them, I'm not sure that this gets solved. Fortunately, it is, and we still have a job to do. We have a lot more things to follow up on, and I would say there are probably individuals out there that could provide some information, and I'll ask them, to come forward, even if they think it might not be relevant. Just anything about this case. People saw him driving around, and although we have a case here, we still have to prove him guilty in the court. So I'll let the chief talk about some of the specifics of the investigation, and then I'll take any and all questions.
Thank you, Mr. Timmons. First, let me say that we'll make a copy of the affidavit available to you. They're in the back of the room. We'll make them before you leave. I can simply say, as Mr. Stevens said, that the community is very aware of what occurred already. Our focus Friday morning really was on the Megan's Law list, and this individual jumped out at us basically as a potential suspect. We began a surveillance on his home on Friday afternoon. After further investigation and determining that he was in violation of the Megan's Law registry process, he was taken into custody and of course placed into prison on bail. From there, our investigation has basically revealed what Mr. Stedman has already talked about, resulting in 11 charges. So I guess if you have any questions, we'll take them now if we can help.
I'll just add a couple things. When you get the affidavit, one of the teenagers identified Mr. Herb as well as his vehicle. In addition to that, the 5-year-old victim saw the Sunday paper, Lancaster newspaper, which had the pictures of the teenager that rescued her, as well as her, and she saw the teenager and said, "That's the boy that saved me," and then also saw the picture of her and said, "That's the man." Obviously, we were not as concerned about making an immediate arrest because he was in custody so quickly on the Megan's Law violation on $200,000 bail, and we were monitoring that to make sure that he didn't post that. He's being held on no bail for this case due to the fact of the nature of the crime and that he is a threat to the community. He has done a very similar crime to this, which is described in the affidavit and is also covered by the media at this point in time, and that is obviously relevant to this case. It's that in essence he served all of his 20-year sentence from when he did this 20 plus years ago. A very similar offense and a similar very similar facts. In essence, he served all of his time and maxed out and then was released. And there was a very short period of time in the middle of that sentence. I believe it was only for a few months for when he was put back in, and he's been out for a short period of time before this offense. So we identified him. She also identified the cane that he used, the car, based on her description, and as I said, the other team identified the car as well. And there's some additional evidence we haven't put in there, but that will be, of it, both the past record as well as some of the other circumstances that we have, and it's a long affidavit. I don't intend to read it. You guys will be able to read that for yourselves, but that's the highlights of it. So, any questions?
Can you talk about how the girl is doing?
Well, that's one of the things that made this case take a little bit longer as far as making the arrest, was that you're talking to a 5-year-old about the worst thing that has happened to her, and hopefully ever happens to her, and her attention span is less than that of an adult. So we couldn't just sit down and say in one interview, tell us what happened, tell us everything what happened, and here, sign this, write this down for us. The interviews had to be done in short stages. We did a number of interviews for a number of days. That's why we had to push the costs back from the afternoon. I mean, this is going to be something that, unfortunately, I'm not going to talk about her particular situation and her status. That's a personal and family matter. I tell you from other cases, these type of abuse cases, they scar these individuals for their lives, and we hope that doesn't take place in this. We have professionals that are best able to deal with this. We offer those services to families and victims in cases like this. But that's why this is so horrific. And the abduction itself, just having a stranger threaten to kill you as a 5-year-old, I mean, you can envision that terror and that trauma, but then obviously the terrible facts beyond that. So we'll hope for the best, but we've seen in the past that this has been absolutely devastating to individuals and affects their ability to have relationships and so forth. But again, I'm talking about cases and hope.
How early was he developed as a suspect?
Well, very early on, a number of individuals, an officer, I believe it was Randy Zook from Lancaster City Police Department, as well as ADA Mansfield, pretty quickly looked at, I know she looked at the Megan's Law registration, looking in the area, looking to see what anyone had found that description. I believe Randy Zook called in here to the police department and had some familiarity with this individual, and I believe that would have been the initial call in. So it was pretty quickly on, shortly after we had the description of the individual from the teenager.
And at that point, had he already been arrested for the Megan's Law violation? Or?
He had not been, and then at that point, then we went and looked at it and saw that he had not verified his address, and that led to the arrest.
Do you know how long he had been in violation?
It was May from May 8th on, so he has to verify quarterly, and he had not done that from May 8th. He was registered at that address, but his crimes are of the nature that he has to verify every 4 months. 3 years.
When it comes to criminals being, or the offenders being non-compliant, you guys had a reason to look into him in this case, but how long, does it typically take if somebody's not registering to get them behind bars?
Well, it really varies. I mean, the way it works is the state police are to provide notification to the local police department that this person hasn't verified. This is, relatively new procedure. They're dealing with massive amounts of number, thousands of individuals. You would honestly have to ask the state police for how long it typically takes. I think it varies. And then obviously it's going to vary by police department as to how quickly they're going to respond to that based on what's going on with their department, based on how many their resources, based on their evaluation of it. So I'm not sure I could give you a definite answer. Obviously, ideally, it would take place immediately, and the police department would deal with it immediately. But then I think that's going to depend from department to department. Obviously no one did anything intentionally wrong here. He was registered at that address, and this guy had done it before, and he was doing it again. I mean, there's one person responsible for this, and he's in jail with no bail, and his name's Harold Hart.
How long had he been out of prison?
A couple years, 3 years.
You mentioned the police were going to kind of talk about how the teenager's description was so instrumental in this case.
Yeah, I'll let the chief talk about that. Yep.
Well, as we've all heard, two boys were, and it's important, I think, for everybody to understand, the community really came out to help with the search for this young girl. And in this case, it was two boys on a bike who made the effort to go through the community looking for the girl. They saw a car, they saw what they thought was the girl in the car, and they began to follow the car. The car eventually stopped and let the girl out. And of course, one of the teenage boys approached the girl, got her, and then turned her over to the fire department. Now, his description was very instrumental in our investigation. He gave us a very good description on the car, the color, and even the individual driving the car. So it was very helpful.
Do you think you would have been able to solve it without that description?
I don't know that. I know that it was helpful to us, that he did the right thing, and it was extremely helpful, and it certainly made it easier for us.
Once the description was put out there, did you guys receive a flood of calls, or how was the community in that aspect?
I think we had maybe one call after the description went out, the initial news release. That was towards another individual and not him.
Can somebody put into context how common stranger abductions are? Are they inherently unusual or?
Very unusual. I don't recall one in my entire career. Most cases like this are usually, we were talking about this earlier, it's somebody that knows the child.
How about you, Craig? Do you remember?
No, I would say it's a similar answer to the chief. It just doesn't happen very much, and we're fortunate for that. But I mean, that's why this is such a terrible case, because it's unimaginable, and the parents are doing nothing wrong, and the family was doing nothing wrong. She was gone for a very short period of time, and we'd like to believe we live in a world that you can go around the corner of your house, you're not going to be abducted by Harold Hart and have your daughter, sexually molested. So, but they're out there, and we do say, just even though we've arrested this individual, there are other ones out there, and we encourage and urge parents to be vigilant, and that's difficult to do. Multiple kids, you're distracted, and but incidents like this are reminders of how things can change in a moment. And we're just extremely fortunate that it didn't turn out worse, and that she's alive.
Do you think he had been staking out that place, or this was just a fluke? He happened to be driving by, saw her, grabbed her?
I don't know. That would be speculation on my part. I don't think there's any question that his crime was premeditated. He wasn't out there to talk to anybody about philosophy. He was there looking for a little girl, and he found one. And it wasn't. If it wasn't then, it would have been somebody else. I mean, that neighborhood is not necessarily the easiest to get into, and let you know what you're doing, but it would be speculation on my part as to whether he knew there were a number of children in that neighborhood or not. I really don't know. He was looking for a little girl, and he took one. Anything else?
He's been out for 3 years. Do you have any other open cases that he may have done this between the time he got out and this case?
Yeah, I can't comment on anything like that. I just can't make a comment about that. There's no other pending charges against him. Anything else from anybody?
Do you know where that other 5-year-old from 20 years ago is today?
I do not, and I hope she's doing well, and obviously we might have to reach back to that case, because I believe the facts are so similar that it'll be our intent that will be part of our presentation to the jury, because it's pretty much mostly identical. So hopefully we don't have to go that far, but this is still unfolding, and that's something we can do looking forward, and will do.
You mentioned over and over again that you have to work within the constraints of the law, that you don't think that this punishment is really enough. Is this a case where you wish you had the death penalty or something, but it just doesn't allow it for these charges? Or what?
Well, I'm not talking about this particular case. Obviously, the law is what the law is. I'm just saying, that these type of cases, people that abduct strangers and sexually molest them, and we see a lot of sexual predators, and a lot of them do it again. and then maybe it's time for a discussion on looking at the penalties for abducting a stranger and sexually molesting them, and increasing those, because in this case he served his maximum sentence and he still comes out and does it again at 73. And there are twisted people, and he's one of them. And you know, all of us do this job for public safety, and everyone followed the law. The prison, the parole board, the police, we did everything. Everyone did everything we could, and he served his maximum sentence. He still got out and reoffended. And like I said, I think maybe it will be a good time to revisit some of these situations to try to prevent it. But you know, the law is what it is right now. We follow the law as it is.
So you're saying in part this is a failure of the system?
Well, I don't think it's a failure of the system, because the system is. What I'm saying is I think this is a good opportunity for us to engage maybe with the legislature on changing it for the future. And you know, I've been there long enough in the DA's office that I've seen a change in the way that the system generally deals with sexual abuse and child abuse in particular. Takes it much more seriously now. I'm not sure that the individual would have, in fact, I would say that he would have not gotten the sentence that he did back then. He got 5 to 20, but he served 20. So it is taken much more seriously in general now, but I still think, just if you're asking me, I don't think 10 to 20 years is enough. That's the maximum we can give for somebody for kidnapping a child, and I don't personally think that that's enough, and I don't think that provides protection to the public. We see these sexual offenders, these sexual predators. So many of them are simply wired differently. It's not about necessarily about rehabilitation. It's about protection, and you know, I'm talking generally. I'm not talking about this individual in this particular case, but we see it time and time again. And some of them will flat out tell you that they struggle with it. They know it's wrong and they can't stop it. And that's a problem for our whole society and for our legislature. And I think this is a good case to engage in. I mean, whether you talk about life in prison, whether you talk about the death penalty, I mean, you tell me what's the appropriate penalty for someone that kidnaps your child, and that's the way and sexually molests your child. Is 10 to 20 years enough? Is 20 to 40 years enough? I submit to you that there's nothing penalty that's going to be enough to make up for it. But that's not for me to decide. I'm a prosecutor. I follow the laws of the legislature, but that doesn't mean I have to say that I necessarily think that it's enough punishment. But right now, he's not even convicted. This particular case, we got to convict him, then we'll deal with the sentence down the line. I mean, again, that's maybe another broader discussion that can be had another day.
Were they caught on camera anywhere, and like at Pine View? Did we see him going in, or do they have cameras anywhere?
There's nothing in the affidavit that I recall. Obviously, it's something we're still looking at. I mean, if we can get that would be extremely helpful. I know the police have looked at all those avenues, and depending on some of our cases, we are able to catch them on camera. It makes a huge difference, and that's why it's so fortunate that we have our team nature witness right there from the beginning. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.